If you suffer from some sort of a digestive problem like constipation, bloating, acid reflux, heartburn, or simply being overweight, then it may be that you are deficient of some digestive enzymes. Oh shit! This video talks about the benefits of digestive enzymes on digestion and weight loss. Digestive enzymes help break down macromolecules into smaller energy units in order to absorb them better and use for different physiological processes. These enzymes are found in your saliva, the digestive tract, as well as inside cells. The main function of digestive enzymes is to improve digestion and assimilate the food you ate better. It improves your body's capacity to extract nutrients from what you eat. Naturally, whole foods are full of these different digestive enzymes, prebiotics, probiotics, and everything that helps you to absorb the nutrients better. Unfortunately, not all food is the same, and they also have different enzymes. Every time you cook your food higher than 114 Fahrenheit or 41 Celsius, you destroy the enzymes in it. Your body also has a reserve of digestive enzymes in the organs, but after many years, you'll become depleted of those reserves, leading to decreased enzyme potential and problems with digestion. Things that deplete your digestive enzyme reserves are overcooked food, chronic stress, inflammation, environmental toxins, mineral deficiencies, medication, heavy metal toxicity, food coloring, and processed food. There are many different types of digestive enzymes, but the main ones are these. Protease that helps to break down protein into peptides and amino acids. Amylase that helps to break down carbohydrates and starch into glucose. Lipase that helps to break down fats into fatty acids and glycerol. Lactase that helps to break down lactose into milk sugar. Cellulase that helps to break down cellulose and fiber in vegetables, grains, and fruit. Your body should be able to produce these enzymes in response to the specific foods that you ate, but most people aren't able to do it because of inflammation and poor gut health.
Are you not aware that I get farty and bloated with a foamy latte?
So here are some foods that can help with digestive enzymes and help to fix your digestion. Ginger has a protease called zingibane that helps to break down protein. It can also promote the production of other digestive enzymes like amylase and lipase. Apple cider vinegar doesn't have digestive enzymes, but it can promote acidity in the gut. This can help to break down the food better. Lemon juice has citric acid, which can stimulate the secretion of gastric juices. Sauerkraut is fermented cabbage that's rich in probiotics and enzymes that improve digestion and immunity. Avocados are a high-fat fruit, which is why they produce lipase that helps to break down fats. Pineapple contains bromelain, which is a protease enzyme that helps with protein absorption, as does papaya and kiwi fruit. Mangoes and bananas contain amylase that helps with carbohydrate digestion. Raw honey is also rich in amylase as well as protease. The best time to eat fruit is actually before your meal, not as dessert, because your body is more ready to absorb fructose. Your saliva also contains digestive enzymes, and they get produced depending on what kind of food you're eating. That's why you should always chew your food thoroughly to break it into smaller pieces and combine it with your saliva. Here are some additional things that can help you to fix your digestion. Don't overcook your food. Eat foods with digestive enzymes. 3. Avoid processed food that's simply dead from all these enzymes and doesn't have anything else. Do intermittent fasting. Don't overeat calories because too many calories will simply deplete your digestive enzymes. Manage stress and inflammation. Don't drink liquids around your meals. If your digestion is already messed up, then taking some digestive enzymes can help you to fix those issues, at least in the short term. The best digestive enzyme supplement I've seen is from BioOptimizers. Their Masszymes digestive enzymes improves protein breakdown and has other digestive enzymes like lipase, protease, amylase, and lactase. They even have a video of it breaking down steak right in front of your eyes. You can check out my affiliate link in the description box below. But other than that, thanks for watching this video. Make sure you click the like, subscribe, notification bell as well. My name is Seam. Stay optimized, stay empowered.
Hi there, I'm Lucy Paget from Intrinsi. I'm one of the owners of Intrinsi, and for some years now I have been quite passionate about food. And it started some years ago, back in my early 20s. I'd been traveling in India doing yoga, came back with, probably the same gut problems that everyone else gets from India. And for some months I was really quite debilitated. And eventually I went to see a nutritionist, and she said to me, you've got to take probiotics and you've got to take wheat out of your diet. And at that point, that basic information was really revolutionary. I'd never heard that advice before. And I was quite surprised because it was quite simple, and the changes that I experienced were profound. My gut problems sorted themselves out, and then I had some unexpected things happen. I'd always had trouble with my skin as a teenager, and I'd been on, kind of antibiotics for years and years, which at the time, I didn't know that that was a problem. And my skin was perfect after I'd taken wheat out for a couple of weeks, and I felt quite frustrated because there I'd been all through my teens and early 20s really struggling with my skin, and here was a really, really obvious, really simple solution. And I initially had a little bit of concern that taking the wheat out would be tricky, but once I did it, I discovered it was actually very simple. There's a lot of good alternatives. So I want to talk to you today about food as medicine in this first part, and how we can start to choose differently and not rely on mainstream information, which unfortunately for the large majority of us doesn't serve us. And so let's talk about choice first of all. So I've written over here the first area to look at when we start to think of food as medicine instead of food just as energy or fuel is to choose differently. Now I can give you information, but until you actually decide that yes, you're going to cut out the morning that the muffin that you're having mid-morning, or yeah, you're going to choose not to have any more energy drinks and sugary sodas, you probably aren't going to change anything until you really have that mental shift. So let's see if today we can create that mental shift for you, because what gets me really excited is providing information to help motivate you to make change. And I'm excited to be doing this talk because one by one, client after client, I try and share little tidbits of information, and here I have you for a few extra minutes where I can really dive deep into some important information. So let's go to the first step. Once you've chosen to change, eliminate the obvious problems. That's your absolute first step to start feel better. So if you haven't done this already, you're going to look at the big sensitivities that are problems for a lot of people. So that includes dairy, it includes corn, it includes wheat, it includes sugar, and unfortunately for a lot of people it can include eggs as well. So those are the big ones. And if you were just to choose a couple of those really big ones, which is generally where people want to start as we kind of look at this big iceberg of potential problems, let's start with a couple. Let's start with sugar, and let's start with wheat, and then let's tackle the other ones. So as we get rid of sugar, we take a big load off of our liver. Liver has to process the extra sugar in our system, and it can create a real backlog in the liver so that the liver isn't able to function as well. Now, an interesting example with sugar, because even let's say you take out sugary drinks, we sometimes don't think of the obvious sugary problems. The biggest obvious sugary problem is breakfast. The cultural breakfast in North America and in Western countries is cereal. So I know all through my childhood and my teens, I would have a chocolate croissant, and I would have a bowl of Shreddies or a Weetabix, and I would lather it in really dark brown muscovado sugar. That was my favorite breakfast. And that was just the normal standard breakfast. So slosh that with some milk, and I was good to go. And the thinking for many years has been, give yourself sugar in the morning to fuel your brain. Well, let's look at that. The brain requires a ton of energy, more than any mammals. 25% of the energy that we have in our bodies that we derive from food goes to fueling our brain. However, the brain does a lot better on fat than it does on glucose. So if we shift back to the sugary breakfast and we're fueling our body with glucose, glucose is fast burning. And what happens is we get energy and then we get the crash. And we have something else to eat and then we crash. But fat is a lot more stable, much more stable. So if we give ourselves fat and protein in the morning instead of the bread, the coffee, the juice, and the cereals, we already are starting out much better. And we're setting up cortisol, which should be high in the morning, low in the evening. We help set cortisol at a higher point. So actually by eating right in the morning, you actually are going to sleep better in the evening. So I'm not going to go too much into that. You can come to my gut health talk, which is in a couple of weeks, and we'll dive more into that. So going back to sugar, I've written here berry season. So our ancestors naturally had a sweet tooth. It is something that is coded deep into our DNA to have a sweet tooth because it helped with survival. But before the time of white sugar and all the other accessible sugars that we have, the season, late summer and fall, when there were berries, that's when we would have had a lot of sugar, or a lot more sugar around. And that sweet tooth meant we wanted to eat those foods which helped to create more insulin, which helped to enable us to store more fat, so that then we could get through the winter seasons more easily. However, our ancestors obviously did not have access to the same amount of sugar as we did, and we just bombard ourselves with sugar first thing in the morning, then at lunch we have a sandwich which turns into sugar, and then in the evening we have some pasta which turns into sugar. There's just far, far too much. So one of the big reasons why we're struggling is too much sugar. So hence us running the 21-day sugar detox, because you pull sugar out, just try it for a few weeks, and incredible changes ensue. So the other area that I want to talk about is looking at quality, so poor quality foods. So poor quality obviously relates to meats that are not raised as nature intended. It relates to poor quality vegetable oils that are so often used in packaged foods and so often used in our cooking. But rather than using vegetable oils like sunflower, safflower, canola oil in your cooking, I think you should switch over to clarified butter or ghee. Perhaps coconut oil. That's a really, really great oil to be using in cooking, and also a really great fuel for our brain, because it's full of medium chain triglycerides, which have been studied extensively and really show an incredible brain food. And then the other good fat to be cooking with is lard from a pasture-raised animal. So you ideally do not want to be buying factory farmed animals that have had a lot of hormones, antibiotics, and also being fed food that nature never intended them to be eating. So really important to think, how was my food raised? And go right back to the soil. Was the soil happy that my food was grown on? Two of the biggest supplements I give out, almost like candy, are magnesium and probiotics. And I give out magnesium so much because a big chunk of our society is really deficient in magnesium. Now, magnesium should not be a deficiency if our soils were healthy, but unfortunately our soils aren't healthy, so then the plants can't pull those nutrients from the soils as effectively as once upon a time they could have. And probiotics, again, when our soils were healthy, when we were outside more, we had much more diverse colonies of good bacteria in our bodies than we do these days. But unfortunately, due to repeated antibiotics, high rise in cesarean section births, lower quality foods, and steroids and other medicines, our gut bacteria, bacteria through the body, so the microbiome is one word that's used to describe that, is not nearly as diverse. And the microbiome is there to really help modulate and support your immune system, amongst many other activities that it has. So quality is really, really key and can help you out with being healthier, but also meaning that you don't need to supplement so much with magnesium, probiotics, and other things like that. So let's also look in this first part, just briefly, once you take out foods that you are sensitive to, once you eliminate some, if not all, of the sugar, once you improve the quality of your food, there is a void that gets created. And early on, before I really knew a whole lot about nutrition, I would chat sometimes with clients in my 20s, and they would say, oh, I can't eat anything, and I'm just basically having rice every day. And what I didn't know was that the void that's created is actually an opportunity to bring in really awesome different foods. And here I'm going to give a little plug for the Light Cellar, because they do a great job. The Light Cellar is a little store in Bowness. They have cooking classes, and they're one of the great resources in Calgary who can help you to learn how to cook with superfoods that you may never have heard of. So going back to the void, let's look instead of at what you can't eat, at what you can eat. So starting to have some really good quality bone broth. So get some chicken feet, chicken bones, duck feet, other animal bones, again, high quality, really cheap when we start to look at bones and organ meat for high quality. And put them in your stock pot with carrots, cilantro, some seaweed, maybe some medicinal mushrooms, some water, a couple of peppercorns, a bit of apple cider vinegar, and cook that overnight. And then in the morning, have a cup of your bone broth. And then have your eggs for breakfast, or have an organic sausage for breakfast. And then later in the morning, Let's look at having some high quality snacks, so perhaps some kale chips with some nutritional yeast sprinkled on them, perhaps some nuts that you've cooked and sprinkled with some nice sea salt, perhaps some muffins that you've made with coconut flour. And then let's look at color spectrum. So color spectrum is really important. Color is basically like a chemical signature. So when we look at all the different colors that there are in nature, the different foods, you can look at the berries, the rich blues and the reds as giving you certain phytonutrients based on that color. Then we've got the oranges, we've got the greens, we've got the purples as well. Greens is obviously a color that we tend not to get enough of, but I want you to think about all the colors, not just greens, and start to load your plate with more color. And when you look at your plate, is it colorful? Or could you actually be doing a better job using some more herbs in your cooking, just getting more greens onto your plate? Maybe having some peppers on your plate, maybe some eggplant. So lots more colors. And then when we pull out the grains that we are used to, we can have some other grains in there. We don't need to be not having any grains. So a few I've written on the board here: amaranth, quinoa, buckwheat. We use quite a lot of sorghum flour at home as well. We use a lot of coconut flour. So I love baking, and I've found really great ways of baking differently and putting in some really fun superfoods into my baking, into my homemade chocolate. And so that is really great. The Void is a good place to start recreating what you eat and not just going back to the habits of the past. And if you think back to when you were at school, initially you learned things just by repetition. And to get through a test, that's good enough, just to have it in your memory, repeat it out. But to get really good at something, you've got to actually deeply understand it so that you can start to question it, you can start to argue around it, you can start to look at it from different angles. And you know that when you were a student, when you got really good at something, you started to see the bigger picture. And it's exactly the same with food. Repetition has gotten us so far in terms of taking what we've traditionally eaten as we were a child and teenager into our adulthood, and then feeding that to our children, feeding that to ourselves. But now we need to scrap that, because the standard American diet has not served many of us, and we need to start looking a bit deeper and introducing some different foods and looking more traditionally at what our ancestors would have eaten. Not exclusively, because they wouldn't have had access to many of the foods that we have and the extended growing season that we have through using greenhouses and getting things bussed over from BC. So I'm not talking about going exclusively back to eating as our ancestors did. I don't think that is realistic. However, there is a massive amount of really cool, awesome food that we can be eating, as well as looking at what we're eating through the day and shifting that around so that we're not having the sugary breakfast. The most important meal that I want you to get your head around is that breakfast should have fats and proteins in. So this is the end of part 1. In part 2, I'm going to talk about posture, movement, and gut health. Now, if this is enough to make you feel like you're ready to choose differently, please join us for the 21-day sugar detox. That's going to be starting really soon, and you can call in the clinic on 403-229-9214, and you can sign up for the 21-day sugar detox. It's $115, and you're going to get this great cookbook by Diane Sanfilippo, which I love. I've used it over and over and over again, and it has a 21-day meal plan in here. I'm also going to be giving you some probiotics as part of your 21-day sugar detox to help start healing up your gut. And you get to come to my gut health talk, which is in early December. So there's a couple of really great options for an action plan to help you choose differently and make that shift, but also have a sense of community and support around that. Thank you so much.